Congressman, thanks for joining me, sir.
Great to be on, Liz. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you again. So this idea of mass deportations, what we can start big picture and then get more nitty gritty, but what is this going to look like? I love hearing stuff like that from Tom Homan, but I'm also interested in the procedure here.
Yeah, well, first of all, Tom Homan is a great friend. He's a fantastic pick by President Trump, and he will do an exceptional job in that role. He and I have worked together. He's come to my district. We went to Lukenbach, Texas together, which is in my district, with Willie and Waylon and the boys. But I'm extremely excited to work with Tom. Tom understands what needs to be done. When we talk about the removals, right, under our current law, we remove people who are here illegally, right, unlawfully. That's what we're talking about doing. This is not something that's like breaking new ground. It's not something that's, oh, this is new and different. What the only different thing about it is we have so many more people to deal with. That's it. So we're talking about removing people for good cause, right? They're here illegally. They're using up our social welfare system. They're criminals. They came here without even checking in. They were gotaways, whatever it is. There are lots of reasons why we remove people. So we will have to give and provide greater resources for Tom Homan and for the president and for his team to carry out what they need to do under ICE to enforce the law and start doing what they haven't done for 4 years, which is if you're here and you're unlawfully present, you're going to get removed. Now, we can do that. There are currently, I think, 1.3 million people who are under orders of removal. We're just not removing them. So we can start there. Tom can take his existing force and start doing that. But what we need to do in the House and the Senate is use the reconciliation process. I support a two-pronged approach, deal with tax and spending later in the spring, start in January, give the president what he needs in terms of tools to the reconciliation process to beef up Border Patrol, beef up ICE, build the wall, fund 287G programs to work with local law enforcement, coordinate, remove, and get folks out. One final component. We also have to deal with fees. We should be taxing remittances, the dollars that flow out of America to Mexico and other countries. But we should also apply parole fees and fees for work permit authorizations to collect revenue to deal with all of the processing we're going to have to do when we face legal challenges about all of the unlawfully released individuals into our country. They're going to claim they're lawfully present. We're going to say, not so fast. The Biden administration unlawfully, illegitimately dumped these people to the United States in violation of our existing laws. Our Trump administration is going to have to fight through that. We need to give the resources to do that. And I believe Tom Homan will be appropriately aggressive. Let's remove criminals. Let's remove the people with removal orders that are already present. Let's jail criminals and remove them. And then let's remove the people who came here who are gotaways. And then let's process all of the people with notices to appear, go through it, do it quickly, and let's get people out. And if you apply the fees, they'll be self-pressured to deport. Sorry for the filibuster, but that's the deal.
No, this is exactly what I wanted to know. So will this mostly be carried out by ICE or by local law enforcement?
So I think it's going to be a mix. And in fact, it should be a mix. Historically, you've had a great collaboration between local law enforcement and ICE. Now, in jurisdictions where local law enforcement want to enforce the law and are able to enforce the law, which are, by the way, most jurisdictions, then those should work with ICE and will work with ICE. And the administration will set up the framework to do that. You find somebody who's unlawfully present, boom, get them, let's remove them. But then when you've got jurisdictions that are recalcitrant, that are sanctuary cities, that don't want to work with us, California's threatened it. You obviously have the mayor out there in Denver. Then, yes, Tom is correct. And you saw a recent Ninth Circuit ruling by a court, by the way, that said we do have the right to step in and remove, irrespective of what the local law enforcement and the local politicians are saying. So Tom is correct. They have to get out of the way. And look, I'm a federalist. I don't like that generally. But when the previous administration has made our country unsafe, has put dangerous individuals, released criminals, released terrorists, and done so knowingly, then the federal government has a job and a duty to make sure we're removing those people and getting them out of our country. And they've got to be able to do that.
Okay, so when it comes to identifying people who are here illegally, we the government has the records, local law enforcement as well as federal law enforcement. We can tell on paper the names of people who are here unlawfully. How were they found? Because you're going to hear the left say, oh, you can't just stop someone of Latino descent on the street and ask them if they're legal or illegal. That's going to be, by the way, one of their biggest lines of attack is you're trying to stereotype all Latinos here. How do you find this out? Are you going to go through employers to say like, hey, you didn't verify their citizenship status? I know you said start with criminals, but how is that done?
Well, first of all, when you've got criminals who have been arrested, then you figure out if they've got an ICE detainer placed on them. Then you know when they've served their time. It could be 3 months, 6 months. It might be longer. Then you've got that ICE detainer. As soon as they're released from their time in jail, then remove them. So that's an important step. And this ICE, empowered by hopefully our funding and Tom Homan and the president, will do that. But you also go through, and like I said, the 1.3 million people who have orders for removal, they've already been processed and they've been told, you got to go. But we don't have ICE currently enforcing that, grabbing them and getting rid of them. So we do that. I mean, then you focus on, there are people who are gotaways, right? Who have no papers. They have no notice to appear. So when you find them through I-9 records and E-Verify, where it's in place in different states, when you run across them when they go file for some benefit and you identify, hey, you're here and you're illegal, this administration will be able to work with local law enforcement to find them. There are always people who are stopped for speeding, for DUI, for whatever it is. You find out, are you a citizen or not? Or, do you have papers? Are you legally here? If you're not, boom, go to ICE, let's remove them. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's the way it historically worked. That's the way it worked really all the way up through even Jay Johnson under Obama. But no, Biden and this world in Mayorkas, they threw out all of the rule of law, stopped enforcing the law, and they just processed people and released them to the country. We have to undo that damage.
Do you anticipate, you mentioned self-deportations before, do you anticipate that happening if employers are disincentivized from hiring illegal aliens in the first place?
Sure. I mean, I think it goes without saying. I mean, first of all, we're already seeing numbers down in the Darien Gap, according to the great reporting of Todd Bensman and others that know it. We're seeing those numbers go down. Why? Because the world is looking at this going, crap, Trump's there. I guess we can't come in now. So that's already happening. If you start enforcing the law here, and if you start, enforcing it with employers, if you start applying fees that will cost money to people who are here, saying, look, you're sitting here waiting for a notice to appear. We got to go hire judges to process your claims of asylum or to claim whatever your parole situation is. Great. You need to go find some money to help us fund all that. And if you do that, then people are going to sort of feel the pressure and they're going to self-deport. We need to create that pressure valve. If someone really wants to be here, they came here, they believe it was legitimate, they have a legitimate asylum claim, we'll be able to figure that out. But that is such a tiny fraction of the 5.5 million plus that have been released into our country, plus the 2 million gotaways, plus the other numbers that have come in, upwards of 10 million, then that's a tiny fraction. Let's remove the people who need to be removed. Final point, though. It's not just the criminals. It is the fact that we have so many people that are on the social welfare state in our country. They come here for free health care. They come here for free education. They come here for free benefits. They get on welfare, SNAP, food stamps. All of these things are magnets, and including employment by people who don't check. So we need to increase that check with employment and make sure that we're no longer putting people on benefits. That's an important piece to this. Apply the fees, and I forgot to mention that earlier. Take illegals off benefits. All of that has to be a part of it.
There's also the census issue, and I wonder if Congress will consider any amendment to our census process, because it seems obvious to me that the left's strategy in encouraging all the illegal immigration is because when a census is taken and illegal aliens are counted, especially in blue districts, it can then cause more representatives from that particular district, meaning it can increase the number of Democratic reps in the House, which obviously gives the Democrats more political power. Is there any appetite in Congress to amend that process?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, this last year, we brought to the floor legislation that would have done that. And unfortunately, Democrats voted against it. But we now have the House and the Senate. So hopefully we'll be able to move it through. We'll need 60 votes in the Senate for something like that. But we should call the question. We should put it over there. We should move the SAVE Act, the bill that I introduced, to require documentary proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. Frankly, we ought to tweak that stuff with respect to elections to get it closer to same day voting. Make sure that it's, or either paper ballots or some other mechanism we can trust to make sure that we have don't have broad, mail-in ballots, that we tighten early voting down to 0 or just a few days. All of those things are things we can do to tighten our overall election system, make sure only citizens are voting, check IDs. All of this has federal purview because we're talking about federal elections. We should do that, and then we can actually believe in the system again.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting. The American people are on the side of safety in America, and that requires the mass deportation. Let me turn and ask you about Doge. Molly Hemingway at the Federalist had a report about you a couple days ago. She was talking about, the Republican caucus getting together and the excitement among Republican representatives for Doge. And the report was that you stood up in front of all of your Republican colleagues and said you're excited to the Republicans about Doge, but you're actually the ones that keep voting for all this spending. You are what Doge is going to cut. Could you verify the accuracy of this story for us?
Well, I try to avoid talking about private meetings, and that was a private meeting with Elon and Vivek and the Republican conference. Molly reported that there were some other people who validated it with sources in the room. So let me put it this way: I will not impugn the character of Molly Hemingway in that she in any way was inaccurately reporting what she had sources for. Here's what I will say on the record here, which is that concept, right? That the Republicans that want to hide behind Doge is real. And look, I love my colleagues. Right? We get a lot, but look, the dirt is on our hands, right? We have, as Republicans writ large for the last 3 decades, we have $36 trillion of debt, a lot of which was mounted on our watch. So we either need to get serious about cutting spending and cutting the bureaucracy, or we're going to be thrown out on our ear. That's just the simple reality. So I'm just trying to remind people, these guys at Doge, they're going to do great work. They're going to identify stuff. They're going to have AI. They're going to put stuff out, crowdsource it. They're going to give a laundry list of things we can cut. Great. We should do that. But we're going to need to get busy and do that. We're going to need to cut the spending levels. We're also going to need to stop passing more programs to spend more money. Those same Republicans in that same room, 2/3 of them voted to shorten the time that Social Security is going to go bankrupt by passing a $200 billion bill that was unpaid for, right? We're going to be dealing with the disaster supplemental next week. God bless the people in North Carolina. There are people in tents and campers. I want to help them. Samaritan's Purse is doing a great job. There is a role for the federal government in emergencies like that, but it can't be a blank check. You can't not pay for it. And that's what we do as a Congress, and we have to stop doing it. So work with Doge, work with OMB. We got to deal with the tax policy that we want, but we've got to drive deficits down by cutting waste and spending. Look in the mirror,
May I say, sir, brilliant diplomacy. Very, 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 very strategic articulation of that. I obviously agree with you 100%. Over in the Senate, there's pretty obvious effort by establishment Republicans to stonewall the Trump mandate. What feeling do you get among your colleagues in the House? Is there that same resistance to essentially their base, or are they excited to move forward with the Trump agenda?
Well, look, I think I'm still looking at the Senate as they're working through this process. And there's some reflexive Senatitis, I call it, right? Where it's like, ooh, we're the senator. We go every 6 years. We're the upper chamber. Okay, all right, well, good for you. Pat yourself on the back. All right, now you got to do your job. And when they go have these interviews and they meet Pete Hegseth and they sit down and they talk and they go through the process, they go, all right, well, maybe there's something here. Maybe the president's right. Yeah, maybe the president's right that this town needs disruption. Maybe the president knows something after going through this election process and getting elected, going through all of this and now nominating people who are not of the normal, groups here, not the cocktail circuit, right? Tulsi is different and a disruptor. Bobby Kennedy is very different and a disruptor. Pete Hegseth, different, disruptor. That's a good thing. So there is, I think, a hunger for that among large blocs in the House and the Senate, however, the uniparty still exists. The powers that be, the things that have always been, pat you on the head. You don't understand, young sir. It's like, hold on a second. Yes, we do understand. You're spending too much money. You're leaving the borders wide open. The military-industrial complex is creating endless wars, and that needs to stop. We need a modern military that has the tools to carry out their job, but is sparingly used, deterrent. And we need strong diplomacy, and we need to restore healthcare freedom and energy freedom and get these regulations out of the way. We need to deliver. And if we do that, Republicans will usher in a new era of prosperity, and I think we can.
We've talked about this a lot on the show, and this is my last question for you. How effective is it? I want to hear your perspective from inside Congress. How effective is it when constituents raise their voices, email, and call the offices of their elected representatives? Does that change the minds of how Congress members behave and vote?
No question that it does. Now, as these technology changes and we get more stuff via email or social media or responses to Twitter or X or whatever, the method changes a bit, right? If you asked me 20 years ago, I'd tell you it's burn the phones down. Now it's kind of a mix. Yes, call in, also send in emails and push back on social media. But yes, the phone calls matter. I mean, look, I will tell you an example. In 2007, when there was a massive amnesty bill that had, was being cloaked as a border security bill with, not amnesty, but it was amnesty. The American people were frustrated. They were like, don't do this. And they wanted a wall built. Now, remember back then, nobody would build the wall until President Trump came along and said, hey, we're building a wall, got elected. They wouldn't do it. So they started mailing the people started mailing bricks in to members of Congress, literally piles of bricks. And look, members of Congress got the message. I remember a couple of senators coming into a meeting with President Bush saying, Mr. President, we can't be with you. This bill is not where it needs to be for the American people. So they listen. So you should engage. You should share what you think. Look, I know my constituents aren't afraid to let me know if I get out of line, and that's the way it should be, right? Whether I agree with them or not, what I'm doing, and I represent them in a republic. So I have to do what I think is right to represent them, and then they have every right to tell me they agree or disagree. Thankfully, more times than not, they tell me they agree, and I'm been happy to be reelected. So.
Well, there you go. It's something we've been talking about often on the show because I feel like there's a unique moment for the American people to be involved in almost every minute detail of this administration.
Yep.
I know you have a vote or a meeting or something important that you need to get to. Congressman Chip Roy, thank you for joining us on the show. You're welcome anytime. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Liz. God bless you. Merry Christmas, and thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you too.